Hello and welcome to another episode of PsycKicks. My name is Liv, and this is the podcast where we talk about all things metaphysical, spiritual, paranormal, and in between. Today, we're going to be talking about spiritual epigenetics, i.e., family zeitgeists, and the idea that ancestral trauma can possibly be passed down both spiritually and scientifically. And I'm excited for it. Honestly, I really am. One of our patrons who goes by one of our patrons named Ashley L sent in this question for me. And if you don't know, I'm a psychic medium. Hi, welcome to the podcast. My name is Liv. And I actually went to school for biology. I wanted to be an equine vet. But after 2 years of doing vet tech work in the equine industry, I just emotionally didn't think that I wanted to continue on another 5 to 6 or longer year journey of college to do something that there's a lot of politics when it comes to veterinary medicine, and I didn't think that I was emotionally stoic enough to further pursue it. So I just finished out my bachelor's in science with a minor in equine studies. But anyways, I like science, and it really gets me excited. So when Ashley sent in this question about ancestral trauma and spiritual things being passed down, I was like, yes, I have to answer this question. This is my time. Everything's been leading up to this. And we've talked about this in a couple other past podcasts, but I'm excited because my husband has also been talking more about I call it spiritual epigenetics, but he's like, I want to talk about family zeitgeists. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna take a little bit of what my husband likes to talk about and a little bit of my own interpretation of things, and we're going to go on a cool little spiritual rabbit hole. Are you ready? Cool. Awesome. Before we get into all of that, I want to give you all a little life update because people like to listen to things about me besides my life as a professional psychic medium, which is not as cool as it sounds, honestly. It's really cool. It's very humbling, super enlightening, but it's not what I think a lot of people might think it is. I don't know. I can't say I like being a medium because it's not something that I necessarily chose. It's just something that I embraced. It's something that I'm good at, and it's because of that I wanted to learn more about it. And when someone is really good at singing and you're like, man, did you learn how to do something like that? And they're like, no, I'm just good at it. That's kind of mediumship for me. And I don't know, maybe that sounds like an asshole thing to say. I don't mean it that way. I just mean it as in so many people ask me all of these really cool introspective questions and stuff like that. But it's just something that I've always been good at in the sense of communicating and channeling the souls of past pets and people and the energy of living plants and pets as well, and just the energy of things. That's my sort of brand of mediumship, but there's a lot of other people in the spiritual community that do stuff a little bit different. So I don't know, maybe it would be the difference between being a really good country singer and then someone that's a really good opera singer. I think that's kind of how you could compare mediumship and spiritual community aspects. Anyways, I don't know. I'm getting off of topic. What's new with me? I'm a mom, and my son, I only have one child. I had my first baby last September, and he's about to turn 1, and I'm literally losing my mind because I don't understand how it's already been a year. Motherhood is not at all what I thought it was going to be. Parenthood for my husband and I, also not at all what I thought it was going to be. And it kind of ties into what we're talking about today with spiritual zeitgeists and ancestral trauma, I guess, because I think becoming a parent is the biggest, longest run of a spiritual awakening / shadow work stint that you could possibly ever do, I think, honestly. And I don't know. It's going to be a year since I've had a baby, and I didn't think that postpartum was going to be the way that it was. I have ADHD diagnosed, and since I've become pregnant or was trying to have a baby with my husband, I have not been on ADHD medication, which has been a struggle for me. And because I have ADHD, I also struggle with anxiety and depression. So I was worried that I was going to have really bad postpartum depression because of just the way my brain likes to do things. And I didn't realize that the entire time during pregnancy, while I was like talking to my doctors and talking to my husband about when I have this baby, if I become really depressed or sad, please help me. Like, I'll need assistance, because I was just, planning to have really bad postpartum depression, because that's what I thought I was just, in the slots for me, if you will. And I didn't even realize that the entire time I was pregnant, I had like pregnancy depression and anxiety, and it was bone-crushingly, soul-crushingly horrible. And I honestly didn't know until after my son Oak was born. It was like night and day difference of my mood and mentality and how I felt after he was born. But then, you have the normal ups and downs of postpartum. Like, I nursed him and I'm still nursing him. And that's a really, really, really big hurdle to get over postpartum, and trying to get your body back, which you never will. But the entire time you are pregnant, it almost feels like a short-term acute illness. And I don't mean to like take away from anybody else that suffers from like chronic illnesses, but I just felt so terrible the entire time I was pregnant. And then postpartum, you feel like it's going to be better, but it doesn't get better for a while. And I'm finally over that hump. It took 9 months to finally feel like I was in my body again, and that I was in control of who I was and what I was doing, and that I actually felt like myself. I could identify with feeling like my mind, body, and soul were at least in sync or overlapping at some point in time, whereas all of pregnancy and the first 9 months of postpartum, I just felt like I was playing racquetball with those portions of myself and just missing every single time. And now that my son is almost 1 year old, I feel like it's gone very, very fast, but also very, very slow, like dog years. Because I feel like a dog's life, in our eyes, they don't live as long as us, but I feel from talking to animals that they feel like their life is fulfilled when they reach a certain age. And that is like living in dog years. It goes by really fast, but also really slow. And it's just crazy. I don't know. That's just something that's on my mind. I think that we're going to do Tigger-themed birthday party, because the only TV that I really have my son watch is Mr. Rogers and Winnie the Pooh. And then he'll watch like adult TV with Brad and I. But Brad and I, my husband, we just watch like sitcoms like Seinfeld, or we're watching this one sitcom called Northern Exposure, or we'll watch Hot Ones. Oak really likes to watch Hot Ones. He waves to all of the guest speakers that they have and things like that, and I just think it's funny. Or interviewees, if you will. But he loves Tigger when he's watching Winnie the Pooh, because his attention span for TV isn't very long. But when Tigger enters as a character, he's just like captivated. So I think we'll have like a Winnie the Pooh themed birthday party with like an emphasis on Tigger. Plus, my husband, he's an auto mechanic, right? And he, for Halloween, would dress up at work, because that is just what they did at the car dealership that he worked at once. And he wanted to dress up as like some sort of character. And I don't know. I think it was just the only one that I could find on Amazon, but it was Tigger. And my husband also has ADHD. And if you guys don't really get like the trope of the Winnie the Pooh characters, it's almost like each character is a certain mentality. Like Eeyore is like depression and Tigger is ADHD. And my husband also has ADHD. And he's very Tigger-esque, honestly. So he actually has a Tigger onesie with a little like hood that pops up on it, with the Tigger head. So I thought it would be also fun, because when little kids have birthday parties, it's always like one of the adults dresses up as like Spider-Man or Superman, or like, I don't know, a dinosaur. And I was like, Brad, you could come in as Tigger and he'd be so excited. So I don't know, that'll he'll cry, but I don't think he'll cry. Oak is a Virgo, Gemini, Sagittarius. So the only thing that I think that would make him cry is he might think about it as a Virgo at the beginning, but once he sees that everyone else is enjoying the fact that Tigger is at his party, I'm sure he'll just embrace it as he does with most everything in his life. So I'm just excited. And then the next thing is my headphones broke. I think they're broken. I can only hear myself as I'm recording this podcast in one of my headphone, like my left side of my ear, and it's absolutely driving me bonkers. I've had these headphones for 3 years, and yes, they're starting to get a little used, well worn, if you will. But when I put them on today, I was like, I don't have money for another pair of headphones right now. So I'm just, if it sounds like I'm talking funny or stopping a little bit, hopefully I can edit it out so that it sounds more cohesive, but I can't deal with the whole like only hearing myself in one ear type of thing, but we'll see how it works. But anyways, that's new in my life. Those are the things that are new in my life. Thank you for listening. And without further ado, let's get into the topic of today's podcast. All right. So Ashley L sent in a really good question as a patron, and if you're interested in learning how to become a patron, please go down to the show notes below. We have really cool benefits like the PsycKicks Discord server. I wanted to start it originally was going to be PsycKicks Pen Pals, and we were going to do like email pen pal things, but we live in the age of technology, which we'll talk about a little bit too in this podcast, and kind of as an aside that goes with this theme. But so we have a Discord server, and everyone that is a patron has the ability to be on the PsycKicks Discord server to meet and become friends with and talk to everyone about all things metaphysical, spiritual, paranormal, and in between. And I'm on there too. I try to pop in every so often and be a part of conversations, et cetera, when I'm not chasing around my son or doing things for work like recording a podcast. But yeah, you get priority too of like submitting questions as a patron. So Ashley wanted to know about ancestral trauma and how it's passed down spiritually. So when it comes to this, I want to talk about two things. The first thing is epigenetics, because as I've embraced my mediumship and talked to more souls and spiritual beings, so that would be people that are in heaven or spirit. And if you don't know, souls, when they pass, gain the ability to know, see, hear, and feel everything. Because as human beings, when our soul is within physicality of our body on earth, etc., we have our 5 physical senses, right? See, touch, taste, hear, smell. But when you're a soul and you're just existing in heaven, or the energetic space existence in which I would conceptualize heaven to be, you don't need the ability to taste, touch, hear, feel things, because you don't have a physical body anymore. We have those things in order to navigate our physical plane. But in order to navigate the spiritual plane, you gain the abilities to know, see, hear, and feel everything. So I have learned through having readings with other people and talking to their past loved ones, etc., having metaphysical, spiritual experiences. And I don't mean that in like a weird, like, I'm on shrooms way. I've never done shrooms or anything like that. It just, you would think in some of the podcasts and episodes, like, and some of the YouTube videos that we've recorded that we might do that, but we don't. So I have learned that epigenetics and a lot of scientific and philosophical or psychological ideas can also have parallels drawn between things that happen in spirituality. There's a lot of overlay that help us understand things that happen in the spiritual world because we see it reflected in our physical world. So that's just, epigenetics is one of those things. So epigenetics is the study of how cells control gene activity without changing the DNA sequence. Epi means on or above in Greek. So epigenetics are changes and modifications to the DNA that regulate whether a gene is turned on or off. So if you don't know or are new, I'll give you a little crash course on DNA and genetics. So DNA is like the coding, if you will, because we live in the day and age of computers, I guess. Or if you don't want to use computers, you could say the ingredients in a cookbook. So it's the coding or the ingredients that create the cells that make up you or your body or the world around us, if you will, living things. So DNA is the information that tells a cell what it should be, how it should function, et cetera, et cetera. Now, epigenetics is just a really freaking cool idea to talk about because I think it has to do a lot with how people process or would understand how ancestral trauma can be passed down. So, epigenetics currently is more of a controversial belief when people talk about it in terms of believing that the changes that happen to the DNA sequences are persistent over generations. So one epigenetic outcome could continue or be continued through a lineage or inherited by others because their parents were a part of an epigenetic event or their genes were affected in an epigenetic way, and therefore their offspring will carry or inherit those epigenetic differences in their DNA. So that is the part that is controversial because I guess people are getting worried that epigenetics could possibly bring back a group of people that I only laugh because I'm nervous about it. It's nervous laughter, if you will. It's controversial because people with that idea, I think, are nervous that the scientific line of thinking known as eugenics could be brought back. And that just makes me annoyed because specifically eugenics was a scientifically erroneous and immensely immoral theory of racial improvement and planned breeding, which was prominent in the early 20th century. And it just makes me angry that having the idea of epigenetics where people could, some epigeneticists or people in the scientific community or enthusiasts of epigenetics believe that it is something that can be inherited from parent to offspring, but other people don't, and that's fine. So a less controversial example of epigenetics would be identical twins. Although identical twins share identical DNA, their unique life experiences will cause them to have some genes that are expressed and other genes that are not. Hence why over time, identical twins will look and behave differently. So, in a whole, epigenetics refers to the ways your behaviors and environment can cause changes that affect how your genes are expressed, which is really freaking cool. It's kind of like understanding evolution, but in a smaller scale. Because evolution, as you know, is when genetic expression and differences are chosen over time, I guess. So like the ones that are the species or the genetic variants of a species that most notably survive or have the highest physical fitness, which is the ability to survive and reproduce and have the most offspring. That's what fitness is in a biological sense. Whichever ones has the best fitness due to the genes that are expressed and their ability to perform in their environment, they're the ones that continue on. So it's almost like epigenetics is like watching that, but on a smaller, more minute and like magnified scale. And by magnified, I mean like it's very small. So you're like looking at like specific sections of things. I don't know, it's just so crazy to me. So I wanted to also talk about the fact that when I first heard of epigenetics, it was by a Jewish college professor that I had in 2019. And it's important that I mention that she was Jewish because she was so excited as my genetics teacher to learn or teach us about epigenetics because that back then it was like an emerging field. And I know it hasn't been that long since 2019, but that's the first time she heard of it and I had heard of it. And she used it specifically in relation to when we were learning about germline mutations. So germline mutations in the human body or in animals refers to genetic changes in a body's reproductive cells, such as eggs and sperm, or not such as, but specifically eggs and sperm, that become incorporated into the DNA of every cell in the body of an offspring. So, germline mutations are mutations in the genetic encryption or encoding of the sex cells that the male and female bodies have. So, you have, if you're a dude, you have sperm. If you're a woman, you have eggs. But there are certain mutations that can happen in those cells given the fact that there are environmental and physical changes that happen to you. So her idea was, if you are in a most like scary environment, if your grandmother or your great grandmother goes through something such as the Holocaust, which is why I said it was important to say that my teacher was Jewish or is Jewish, because she thought that a lot of the behaviors and mental like ideas and views and the way people view the world, like it was an idea of nature versus nurture, and the fact that because so many Holocaust survivors went through such extreme and inhumane and horrible experiences, that their germline mutations happened, or that germline mutations happened within the cells of the people that reproduced to create or give birth to people like my college biology genetics teacher. And because of this, ancestral trauma was inherited, and that's how all of this has to sort of combine and come together in a spiritual and scientific way. So if epigenetics is true, epigenetics is a change to your expression of DNA that happens due to an environmental or mental, physical or mental repetition, I would say. It's almost like muscle memory, but for your cells or the DNA of your cells. And if you think a certain way or you do things a certain way physically, then your cells are going to express genes in which facilitate that current line of thinking or current line of movement. But saying that a germline mutation can arise from an epigenetic encounter would be more like the epigenetic encounter would have to be so large, so harsh, that it actually changed the germline cells to have a mutation, which then would be inherited. So some people don't think that epigenetics could be inherited, and then some people do. And I think the reasoning behind that controversial difference of whether epigenetic differences can be inherited or not is because people are worried that eugenic thinking is going to arise yet again from its kind of death since the 20th century, which it is not a good thing to at all be a part of. But again, I think the rise of eugenic thinking wouldn't be because of the controversial idea of, is epigenetic mutations, and they're not even mutations, I shouldn't say that, epigenetic changes in DNA could be inherited. I don't think the rise of eugenic thinking would be correlated to that. I think it would be correlated to a lapse in morals, honestly. So if that's something that people are worried about happening again, I think we're not focusing on the science of it, and we're more so focusing on a lack of morals, or that people aren't being taught to not have thinking ways like that, because that's dumb. Anyways, isn't that cool? Like, think of muscle memory, mental memory, and cellular memory, but now genetic memory. And then that goes into soul memories, which would be what Ashley wants to talk about, which is ancestral trauma and how it could be passed down spiritually. So now that we've talked about epigenetics, let's also talk about zeitgeists. So the idea of zeitgeist was, well, the word zeitgeist is German, and its actual meaning translates to the spirit of the time. And in the 18th and 19th century, a German philosopher created this theory, or had the idea of this theory, and described it as an invisible agent, force, or daemon dominating the characteristics of a given epoch in world history. And according to the American Psychological Association, the term zeitgeist was used by German philosopher George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel, who lived from 1770 to 1831. And zeitgeist specifically refers to a type of supra-individual mind at work in the world, which manifests in the cultural worldview that pervades the ideas, attitudes, and feelings of a particular society in a specific historical period. So this idea, this zeitgeist, or the spirit of a time, is honestly just like a theme of humans at a point in time. It's kind of like if you were to watch a play, and during that play, like, I don't know enough plays. Gosh darn it. Just imagine a play. what is the theme of the Hamilton play? What is the theme of the Princess and the Pea play? Now imagine, take that theme and then apply it to an entire world time, like, of people. It could be argued that today's zeitgeist is fluidity of identity and the labels we choose to describe ourselves. Like, that is our epoch's zeitgeist, or one of them, you could say. So when it comes to zeitgeists and familiar ancestral trauma, etc., I think a family zeitgeist could be how many college graduates are in your family. Addiction or sobriety within a family, being mechanically inclined, people that are farmers in a generation or generations of family, that is like a family zeitgeist. So one of the things that my husband and I have been talking about as, quote, spiritual epigenetics, or a ancestral zeitgeist or family zeitgeist, is going to be who is married in our family. Because we both come from parents that were either unmarried, remarried, or divorced, or all of the above. So we're trying to break the generational zeitgeist of not having children that come from a family that is separated or divorced. I feel like that could be a giant zeitgeist that's going on too, with how many children nowadays come from families that don't have parents that are together anymore, which is a large thing that you can break down, and that's not what this podcast is about, but that is the idea of zeitgeist. So if we go back to Ashley's original question, given that information, I like this. The reason we have this podcast, or PsycKicks as a whole, is to not tell you what spiritual things are and to tell you how to think and how to feel about spirituality. I would like to be able to give you the tools and the ideas and information to create your own interpretation and understanding of things, which is, I hope I didn't lose a lot of people just going on about epigenetics and zeitgeist, but I want to give you that information first and then give you the question of what Ashley asked, because that will help you formulate your own idea and hopefully see how I was able to create this idea as well as a medium, and from talking to other people and understanding these psychological and scientific ideas. So Ashley asked, ancestral trauma, how is it passed down spiritually? And specifically, she says, I know someone who has hated trains and didn't know why, but after tracing her family tree, they found out a family member was killed in a horrific accident. Now, I don't know if ancestral trauma is a thing, but is it possibly past life traumas presenting in this current life? So I would like to talk about, given this information, if someone can be affected by a traumatic event that happened to another person before them. I think that the answer is yes. I think that you can have, and we're not even talking about past lives right now. We're just talking about, can ancestral trauma be inherited? And I do think that that is possible. I think it has to go more with like family zeitgeists or generational zeitgeists of if this person's family member had a very traumatic experience with a train, then if there were surviving members of the family born afterwards, even with epigenetics, it would make sense that nature versus nurture. So even if we're looking at it from an epigenetic stance of your mental experiences and physical experiences lead to a change in the DNA that is expressed in your genes, right? So DNA expression leads to not only behavior, but also the way someone looks. So let's just talk about it behaviorally. If you were a family member or a child, a part of this horrific accident, so you didn't actually die yourself. You weren't the person that passed in the accident, but you were the wife of the person that was lost in the train accident, and you had children. How would you think that that woman might raise her children to feel about trains or the situation that happened in the family? if it was large enough for her, I'm sure that she nurtured, not natured, but nurtured that fear of trains into the family lineage. And that's not to say that that can't alter other people's thinking and perception and physical, like, mentality about trains themselves. So I think that, yes, your ancestral trauma can be passed down in an epigenetic way, and then it's further facilitated in the mindset about things. So I hope that makes sense. Now, on a past life sense, I also think that you can inherit past life trauma. However, I don't think that past life trauma is going to be in the same way as epigenetic or zeitgeist trauma, honestly. I think that, this might be controversial. It is of my current opinion that your past life and all of your past lives that have happened leading to your current life right now are separate. I guess, how do I explain this better? The thing that's been bothering me is a lot of people have been coming to me and asking me whether or not or what they can do in order to heal the trauma of their past lives or to learn the lessons that their past lives haven't learned. And I just think that it is something in the spiritual community that is predatory in a sense. And I'm just nervous laughing because I don't want people to like come for me, but it just bothers me that there's a lot of people part of the spiritual community today that are like, I'm going to tell you what your past life trauma is and the lessons that your past life didn't learn so that you can learn them in this life, because if you don't, then you're not going to do X, Y, and Z or this, that, and this. And it bothers me because I don't think that you as a person have to go out of your way to cognitively understand something that your past lives have or have not done or have not learned, because if they didn't meet those marks, you as a soul would not be who you are or existing as you are today. It's almost like, and I guess this kind of fits into the podcast too, it's almost like telling a child that they have to fix and learn the lessons that their parents didn't learn or fix the problems that their parents started. Does that make sense? Like if your parents came up to you and are like, I have $20,000 of credit card debt or $100,000 of credit card debt. Now it's your problem to fix it. What would you say? You would be like, that is not my job. Or you'd sit down and be like, well, this is what I know about it. And this is how you could help yourself. But you're not going to like, I don't know. It seems like something that people in the spiritual community are trying to prey upon, because there is this idea in certain spiritual aspects and religions that of like karma, and you have to do certain things in order to reach enlightenment. And I think there's some people that maybe if it is a part of your spiritual beliefs, great, go for it. But in my understanding, or the way that I feel about it from talking with my spirit guides and other people during readings, it's that your past lives have learned what they're supposed to, and there's nothing that you need to heal or do from, because you living your life as you are now are healing and learning and continuing the things that your past lives have done, haven't done, or needed to do, I guess, which is the same thing as what I said before. So you just living your life is what's going to help heal past trauma and heal things that your past lives could, shoulda, woulda, didn't do type of thing. Like the fact that if you go back to the parent-child comparison, you continuing to live out and be a better version of your parents, or live to be the best version of you, because you are technically, genetically speaking, a version of both your parents, that is what's going to heal things. So when it comes to past trauma from past lives, though, I do think that you can inherit it, but you can also, I don't know, there's all this like trauma healing going on the internet, and I'm all about it. Like I want people to learn and live and heal and feel better, but there's also so much other things that I think people can phrase about it too, of you can learn and inherit a lot of good things from your past lives too. So for example, me specifically, I have a past life, I believe, as a woman who passed when she was pregnant from a car crash in like the 30s or 40s, something like that. She was a little more highfalutin. It might have even been the 50s or 60s. I don't know. But when I was a baby, my parents could not put me in a car seat. As soon as they put me in a car seat and the car started moving, I would freak out so much that I would just like throw up all over myself, all over the car, and I was inconsolable. Eventually, I grew out of that, but I think that when I was a baby came from the life that I lived before, where I passed in a car crash and no one knew why I was doing that. I didn't even know why I was doing that because I was just a baby, but I think it was a soul memory, just like the epigenetics of if something happens to you, it changes the expression of your genes and therefore your thought process and your reaction to things. So if I died in a car crash, and that was my previous life before the life that I've incarnated into now, that would explain why I was unconsolable as a child in a car. But do I let that hinder me now? Do I have a problem driving in cars for the rest of my life or feeling safe in a car? No, I just acknowledge that that may have been something that happened in a past life, and this is the supporting evidence that I have of it. But I move on. I don't have to do anything about it. I just got to keep moving forward. I'm not going to hyper fixate on it and be like, I can never be in a car again because what if I die? That's not a healthy way to think about it. Now, on the flip side of inheriting ancestral trauma or inheriting things from your past lives, you can also inherit really cool things. Like, how many of you that are listening right now have just inherently felt drawn to old-timey things or have inherently felt drawn to some sort of profession or way that you deal with the world around you? I'm sure, just because this is a metaphysical podcast and I'm a girl and I'm learning about witchy things, how many of you right now are a girl or a boy that enjoy when you were little sitting outside and like making fairy concoctions, taking flowers, smashing them up, making them into things and like pretending like they were medicine or poison or food or something like that? Same. That was me as a child. I tried to make fairy food all the time. But now I'm very intrigued in like biology and medicine and helping people. And I also feel that because of this inherent thing that I feel drawn to in this life now, I know or feel that I have a past life as a woman who was like a doula, someone who helped women who were pregnant and women who were sick and things like that. And I think that is one of the reasons that in this life, I feel drawn to biology and understanding the human physiology and also the world around us and how it can help us or hinder us, etc. So just as much as past life trauma can also influence your life now, past life awesomeness, tools and knowledge and skills and things like that that you've had from other past lives also all go into this life. And it's really freaking cool. Like my husband, for example, he wanted to go to welding school to be more useful to a job that he used to work. So he put himself through welding school. And he was super, super scared about it. He's also left-handed and he's very, very good. He's one of those people that I sit down and do arts and crafts with him. And he doesn't have very good like printed handwriting, but he has beautiful cursive writing. And when you sit down with someone like that, you think that because their handwriting is so messy that they're not going to be good at like arts and crafts or something. This dude is so freaking good at arts and crafts. I don't even want to do anything anymore. Like we did a New Year's Eve sip and paint to Bob Ross. And I was like, I've taken art classes in college. I'm going to be really good at this. Bradley went to high school and he is a car mechanic. I'm going to be way better at making a scene of a painting than him. And this mofo did so good. It blew my mind. So, he went to welding school and he was so nervous about it. But actually, he has a past life as someone who was a welder for the rivets that go on planes during World War II. Because there used to be rivets on on planes and things like that, where they would like screw them in or something, and then I guess welding replaced it. That, or it's the opposite. Don't quote me on it. Go look it up if you really want to know. But he has a past life as someone who was a welder on planes during one of the wars, and he was really freaking good at his welding class. Like he was absolutely fabulous at it. So things that carry through your past lives can also carry into your current life. And I think that epigenetics and zeitgeist ideas can be applied to ancestral inheritance spiritually of these things. And that is what I wanted to talk about today. Did you enjoy my somewhat slightly unconfident thing of talking about this? I don't know. I was really nervous about it, and I just wanted to talk about it, and I actually made notes, and I feel like making notes actually makes me less good at talking, but I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know what you think about epigenetics in the show notes below, past life trauma, and inheritance of spiritual things, because it's a very cool topic and I really just enjoy it. And if you think that you have any past lives that you've had, let me know in the comments below. Like, what are the things that you think you've inherited from your past lives? Good, bad, happy, sad, everything in between. Because I mean, I'm here for the happy ones, but I'm also here for the sad ones. Share it, because maybe typing it out in the comment section on the PsycKicks Extras YouTube channel will just make you feel better and heal that ancestral trauma in a little bit of a different way. So, thank you all so much for listening. If you're interested in a private reading, I do have availability for August and September, and soon I'll have availability for October too. But until next time, thank you so much for listening, and PsycKicks! Peace.